I want to make a little bit of a video on what I did today, and I'm not going to go into too crazy of detail because it's not that impressive of a job, I guess we'll just say. But it is kind of interesting, and maybe this is something that you're working on right now or something you're trying to get some ideas off of. I just want to start by saying this isn't, the most ideal way of dealing with this. If this were my property or if I had more money to spend on this, but I live in a fairly low income neighborhood. But he's a good neighbor, so I don't mind going a little bit out of my way. So what we have here is a I guess we'll start by kind of like the story of what this house is. This is a pretty old house. This could have been built in the, who knows, the 50s or the 60s, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later. But back in that day, a lot of the time what you're dealing with is a stacked stone foundation, and luckily this is not a stacked stone foundation. This is actually a concrete foundation. And you kind of see right around in here. This is the foundation. It's basement, kind of. What they did on these houses a lot of times is they just might pour like 2 or 3 feet of a basement. You're lucky if maybe even get a bit of a footing on it, which just did. It had probably, I think it's, the grade beam is what we'll call it, is essentially 8 inches wide, and it might have had like a 10-inch wide or a 12-inch wide footing on it. That's 4 or 5 inches thick. Uh, and you can see right like at the bottom of it, that is the exposed edge. That is the footing down there. You can kind of see that lip down there where it jogs out a bit and then it turns to dirt. That's the bottom of the grade. That's the bottom of the cement. So what originally ended up happening on this, I've been on this project a couple times now. This house is, I've known 3 different owners of this house, and the previous owners, the ones that are living in it now, they, I'm not gonna, I don't want to slander them, but they kind of did some stupid things here. We used to have a lot of water coming through the area, and the guy wanted to put some weeping tile in. Oh, sorry, we'll explain a little bit more what this is. So, uh, these older houses have barely any basement put on them whatsoever. They're just essentially a grade beam, something solid to set the house on top of, so it didn't move around too much. Then what ends up happening, maybe in the 60s or 70s or 80s, you hire some cheap labor, some people that are looking for work during tough times to come in and dig out a part of your basement just big enough so you can get some of the utilities out of the house. And then that's the inner portion here. So what they do is they don't dig out the entire basement. That would be stupid. You would have to put more concrete in. But what they do is they go like 6, 8 feet in from the edge, and they dig out just a little area and put in a wooden retaining wall just to get the furnace and the water heater out. So you'll see a little bit later here. You'll see all the utilities, and this is pretty common. I mean, I don't think I'm sure most people know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm not getting too much detail on that. But what ended up happening is we used to get a lot of water through this area, and it would come right in one window, right in their back window, and right out the front window, and it would cook their utilities all the time. I don't know, between all the different owners that I've known, they've probably gone through who knows how many countless furnaces and water heaters over the years. Finally starting to get this problem taken care of. The water isn't so much of an issue anymore, and we're finally starting to get some proper drainage and some pumps in. But anyways, what ended up happening with the previous owners is the guy brought a vac truck in to dig around on the inside of that wooden retaining wall to put weeping tile in to go into a sump pump. But he did it like the day after or the week of this really bad flood, and there was all that moisture in the dirt right down here. And when he pulled that fill out from the bottom of that retaining wall, all that dirt sloughed in and pushed the retaining wall in. And then the house actually started tilting because the dirt started sloughing away from the bottom of the grade beam, and things were just going sideways. The house was rocking, the house was sinking in one part. Things were in a real bad shape, and we had to do just an emergency, just to try to get this house from one just crumbling to the ground. And I've seen this before. It's a terrible thing to watch happen. So what I ended up doing, and again, a lot of this was, what I could do for them. He wanted to still have like all of the make all the decisions on this, so he really wanted I-beams under this. He was thinking, I guess what his mentality was. We'll have a little bit of a look at this. We'll start right at the beginning. Okay, I can just kind of let this play a little bit as I'm talking here. He wanted to bring these I-beams that you can see right here in, and we'll either lift up on those I-beams and put a proper basement underneath it, or we'll just put these I-beams in for extra support. At some point, worst case scenario, if the foundation was no good anymore, then potentially we were thinking about bringing a house mover in, moving the house to the side, building an entire proper basement, and then moving the house back on top of it. It was a very stressful time for them. I understand, and he wasn't entirely sure what he wanted to go with, and he wasn't giving me. He just basically wanted a guy that had a lot of resources in the area, and somebody to help him do the work. So I was just basically, trying to help out as much as I can, just trying to be a good neighbor. They live right across the street from me, so that's what we did. I got these I-beams from the place where I was working at the time, and I borrowed a backhoe from a guy, and we just slid these in underneath, and then I poured piles outside of the window. So there was 4 windows around here originally, and we slid the I-beams in through the front window and out through the back window. But before I did that, I actually poured big concrete piles that the I-beam outside those windows that the I-beams are sitting on as well. So that's what happened. We got the house lifted back up. I ended up building this ICF retaining wall down here, and what he wanted to do was to have something that he could set posts on for added additional support, and then he also wanted something that he could backfill up against. So he tossed a bunch of gravel in up against that to shore up essentially the foundation again. But he kind of got a little bit lazy halfway through. He actually quit paying me at one point after I got the beams in, and he had to find somebody else to help him put the gravel in. I think he got a hoodwright to help him for next to nothing, and then shorted me on the last payment anyways, and then that was the last time I'd ever talked to that guy. So fast forward a couple years later, the new owner, who I'm pretty on pretty good terms with, saying he's having some issues with the center of the house, and you can see here actually all the floors in the house were sloping down toward the middle. And he got this nice laser level, and he hit the floors from all the different points, and everything was sloping down toward the chimney in the middle. So what we did is we went around and we jacked up all the different areas. We were lifting off that new basement that I built out of the ICF. We were lifting off a bunch of different posts that we had around. We were using a bunch of different hydraulic jacks and some screw jacks, some what do you call it, teleposts, screw pot. We're just lifting from all the different points that we could. Try to lift all the floor up as evenly as possible. And then I added these angle iron brackets, and I used concrete 1/4-inch smack pins to fasten those to the chimney. Because what he noticed when he came down is it looked like this area around the chimney had sunken down, because you could just kind of tell the way that sealant there was kind of sheared off, and it was sitting down about an inch lower than where it should have been. So the floor in the center was definitely noticeably sinking. So we lifted up all the way around. Once we got everything secured around the perimeter and the floor seemed pretty level, I put these in just as some additional support around the chimney itself, just to give it as many points as possible. And we'll just have a quick walkthrough here, and then I can kind of explain. So on this north side here, you can see these 2 posts. These were added in for supports on the grade beam. I built these little miniature little teleposts that we put under the beam just to make the beam take a little bit of the deflection out of the beam. And then we put jacks on this gray beam, lifted up on these house beams, and then used just flat stock as shims under there as well. And then we just did that at every point, everywhere around that we could. And then we put a couple more teleposts in the middle. And I'm going to come in back in here later on. So we put this, see that on that side of the chimney. We put that telepost that you kind of see that I just kind of glanced over there. And I'm going to come back in later on. And we're going to do on the outside of this retaining wall, so you can see these longer little miniature teleposts that I built. Just taking that deflection out of the beam. And then we were lifting, so we put these in first. Just got those nice and snug in there. We don't want to be lifting up on that beam and lifting it up off the piles. These are just to make this beam a little sturdier in the middle there. And then we were lifting up the house, putting shims in on the top of this beam, and then setting it back down on the beam, just to take all the deflection out of that beam. And then I'm going to come in here later on the outside of this retaining wall. I'm going to put a few more piles in. I'm going to take a post hole digger and I'm going to go around and put a few more concrete piles. I'm going to dig down, make concrete piles, and then we'll put some more teleposts on top of those concrete piles. Some of these teleposts around the outer perimeter here are just down in the mud, buried right now, and we pulled one of them out and it's just completely rotten. So this area here, where it's sloughed in really bad, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go in with a post hole digger, an electric one that I built, and I'm going to do probably 3 or 4 concrete piles. I'm going to dig the dirt away. I'm going to dig some holes out. I'm going to screw down with a post hole digger. I'm going to set some sonotubes on top, and we're going to put some more piles in here that we can put more screw jacks in. Probably some custom built screw jacks. I built him those little orange screw jacks that we used, and he really liked those. So I probably just might even build him some more heavier duty ones, obviously. But and then he's talking about once we get those outer piles in, he wants to backfill that area a little bit more with some gravel, and then he's going to take that other retaining wall there. I'll actually go back to that. So once I get those piles in, he's going to cut that that little retaining wall out of there, and then level it off with the gravel real nice, so he can use this bottom area here for storage. I might even pour some concrete in there for him, so it's up off the gravel, a little drier, a little nicer, a little less musty. This is about a day worth of work, just kind of putting these extra little supports in here, getting the level nice and bang on and flat. And the main reason we did this is, one, because it was sagging. Like, who knows, how much worse it may have gotten. And then also he wants to do the floors in the main area, and it was just all over the place, uneven, out of level, just warped up and down all over the place. So now he can pull that floor up. He can throw some self-leveling concrete down, put a nice good subfloor down, and then he can put some nice flooring in, and he'll have a flat, firm floor to walk on. And that's pretty much what I did today. Hope somebody found that interesting, and we'll talk to you later.